This episode of the Europuck podcast is brought to you by DraftKings. Now, I think it's safe to assume that those of you listening to the show are hockey fans and are fans of the sport of ice hockey, but I know that some of you probably like other sports too. I know, Chris, you're a big football fan. I'm kind of interested in basketball and American football and everything, but I'm sure we have some fellow UFC fans out there, and you will know that the wait is finally over. The notorious Conor McGregor is stepping back into the octagon this Saturday. Before the fight gets underway, though, be sure to check out DraftKings Sportsbook, the official sports betting partner of the UFC, for a shot to turn $1 into $257. That's right, you heard me correctly, folks. New users to the platform can bet a single dollar on Conor McGregor to win by knockout in the first round, and if he does so, you'll walk away with $257. Bet a little, win a lot. It's really that simple, folks. You're not a UFC fan? Well, don't even worry about it, as DraftKings has you covered on a number of other major sports leagues, such as the NFL, the NBA, the NHL, and the English Premier League. I've personally been using DraftKings since 2017, and I love how safe, secure, and reliable their service is. It's really easy to deposit and withdraw your money whenever you want, and they also provide a variety of responsible gambling tools to help you take a break when you really need one. So download the top-rated DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use the promo code THPN, it's on the screen there, THPN, when you sign up to turn $1 into $257 if McGregor wins by first round knockout. That's promo code THPN for new players to get $257 if McGregor wins by first round knockout. Available for a limited time only at DraftKings Sportsbook. A big thank you to DraftKings for sponsoring this episode. Hello, bonjour, hello, hi, heya, and privyet, hockey fans. Welcome back to the Europuck podcast, the show where two Brits talk all things European hockey as part of the Hockey Podcast Network, brought to you by both DraftKings and Crosscheck Clothing. That's right, Chris, we've got two sponsors on the show for the next little while. How cool is that?
We have, yeah, we're getting ourselves some sponsorship, getting you guys that... a cool merch in the example of Crosscheck Clothing anyway, and opportunity of winning some money.
Absolutely. So as you have heard, Chris is here. Hayden, Oddman Rush, I'm here also. Welcome to the show, guys. I believe this is episode 20 of the Europuck podcast.
Sounds about right.
Sounds about right. I think last week was episode 19. Today is Tuesday, the 19th of January, and we've got plenty of things to talk about, whether it be our new sponsors, whether it be European hockey. We've got plenty to talk about regarding European hockey. But Chris, before we begin, how are you today?
Yes, not too bad. I'm bracing myself for the storm that we're going to get tomorrow here in here in the East Midlands of England, but yeah, we're due to get like 50-mile-an-hour winds tomorrow and plenty of rain.
Thrilling.
So yeah, it is, isn't it? And yet another week with no sport for me to go to.
Yay! But speaking of the weather, did you guys get any snow this last week? Over the last couple of days? Yeah, how much did you get?
Yes. 6 inch.
Yeah, it can't have been more than that we got either, because I woke up, it must have been, Friday, Saturday, something like that. And I woke up and I looked outside my window and there was snow on the ground. And for those of you who don't know, here in the UK, unless you live like really far north in Scotland, snow isn't a thing that usually happens. Or if it does, you get it like once or twice every single year. So
yeah, I tend to get it a lot more than you do.
Oh, for sure.
You being slightly further north. But
yeah. But I looked outside my window, I was like, we have snow. Why do we have snow? We don't need snow. But then again, it is January, so what do you expect? But anyway, Chris, should we just crack on with some European stuff?
Yes.
Let's do it, because we've got quite a lot to talk about today, so we may as well just crack on with it. And we're going to take you quickly through the scores across Europe, because we've got some other topics that we want to discuss. And apparently Chris has a quiz set up for me this week, which I have no idea what to expect. So let's just get through the scores and the standings quickly, and then we'll take you through that. So we have the standings for the KHL first. I'll take you through them, and then Chris can add his thoughts afterwards. So in the Western Conference, we have CSKA Moscow still up top, a 1-0 lead at the moment on Spartak Moscow, so a Moscow rivalry going on there. 73 points in 47 games for them. In second place, you have SK St. Petersburg, who just beat I believe it was Avto, Yekaterinburg, 3-1, I believe. 64 points in 48 games. You have Lokomotiv, 63 points in 47. Then Dynamo Moscow, 61 points in 47. Then you have a bit of a drop to 5th place. Dynamo Minsk, 54 points in 47 games. Jokerit only 3 games behind the rest of the league now, but 1 point back from Minsk with 53 points. Sevastopol Sharapovets, 52 points in 47 games. Spartak Moscow, 50. And then the teams outside of the playoffs, you've got Vityaz Podolsk, 49 points. HC Sochi, 32 points, so a real big drop. And then Dinamo Riga taking up the last place in the Western Conference with 21 points in 46 games. Then in the Eastern Conference, you have Akbars Kazan, who are the first team this season to guarantee their place at the Gagarin Cup playoffs. They did it with a 3-1 win over Avangard a couple of days ago, I believe. 76 points in 48 games. So if they've got 76 points and Moscow have 72, I would imagine Moscow are pretty close behind in terms of securing themselves their first playoff berth, or the first playoff berth in the West this year. Then you've got the aforementioned Avangard, 64 points in 48 games. Salavat with 62 in 49. Magnitogor 61 in 47. Yekaterinburg with 59 in 48. Torpedo 56 in 49. Tractor with 55 in 47. And Baris Nur Sultan with 53 and 45. Those are the playoff berths. So still very close towards the middle of the pack and the kind of 2 to 4 spots. And then the teams outside of the playoffs, more in the Eastern Conference because Admiral Vladivostok isn't playing this year. You've got Sibir Novosibirsk, 44 points, so a real drop compared to Baris. Then Amur Habarovsk with 39 points. Then you've got Neftahimik with 30 points. And Kunlun Red Star also with 30 points, but 2 games in hand on Neftahimik. So they might be able to sneak up into the penultimate spot in the Eastern Conference, which for a team like Kunlun Red Star, that would be a huge victory. So, Chris, what are your thoughts on the KHL so far?
Yeah, not much has changed since last week, really. Akbars Kazan, as you said, getting the first berth in the playoffs for this year, and as you say, CSK Moscow are maybe 3 or 4 games away. Doing some quick maths on there, so it's a bit tighter in the West. But yeah, the midfield is very, very tight. I think. Given they're 12 points clear now, Akbars. If their game against Riga stays the same, they've probably got that first place pretty much wrapped up because they're 6 games clear.
True.
With 14 to go. So it's they've got to have quite a big drop off to not get first there. But then that midfield is pretty tight, and of course the top 4 get the home advantage in the first round. So you're definitely going to want to try and get into there to avoid having one of the higher seeded teams in the first round. Same as still there's all to play for down near the bottom as well. I mean, Baris Nur Sultan are in 8th at the minute, so they would come up against Akbars, but they've got games in hand. And they've got 3 games in hand over Yekaterinburg, and 3 games is 6 points, and that puts them level with Yekaterinburg. So, it's all still to play for down at the bottom there. Again, 9 points difference between Sibir and Baris have got games in hand. It's looking as though we probably know the 8 teams in the East, or at least 7 of them. Over in the West, it is a little bit tighter, but if you take out Sochi and Riga, we know that 8 of the 9 teams in the top of there are going to make it. And again, with Podolsk, it's a bit tighter, but there's only 1 or 2 games in it between Podolsk in 9th and Jokerit in 6th. So again, you could see some movers and shakers there. But getting into the close now, I think the last few weeks of the regular season, if I know correctly, the regular season finishes at the end of February, so only about 5 weeks left of the regular season.
Wow, that's come quick, hasn't it?
Not far off in the KHL at all from getting into the nitty-gritty playoffs.
Absolutely. So basically, by the looks of it, we've got 9 teams still looking to clinch a berth in the playoffs. Sochi and Dinamo Riga are pretty much out of it, let's be perfectly honest. And then, so basically it's going to be a decision of who's going to get in the playoffs between, let's say, Sharapovets, Spartak Moscow, and Vityaz Podolsk. 2 of those 3 teams are going to make it based on the standings at the moment. There's going to be 1 team that's going to be bitterly disappointed at the end of the year, but there still is something to play for there for 9 teams. Whereas the Eastern Conference, I feel like Baris Nur Sultan's going to be a real dark horse team because they have those couple of games in hand. And like you mentioned, if they go on a bit of a run, they've only won 2 of their last 5 games, but they're coming off a win against against Amur, and they're currently winning 1-0 against Jokerit. So, if they string together a couple of wins here, like you mentioned, they could be sitting as high as 5th or 6th in the division. So we really could be seeing some competitive hockey down the stretch, but we already know the 8 teams there, whereas the Western Conference, there's 9 teams still competing. We've basically got the 8 teams that are going to be making the playoffs. It's just a question of who goes where. So,
it's just the order.
Yeah, exactly. So we're in the dog days of the KHL season now. There's going to be some teams that are left bitterly disappointed when they drop 2 points against some of their opponents. And some of these lower teams down the league could play upset for some of these other teams as well. So we're going to have some exciting hockey coming up. And by the end of February, we'll be sitting here giving you an overview of the entire KHL season, which is absolutely crazy to think about. But let's move on to the next highest league in Europe. And that is, of course, the Swedish Hockey League. Now, there's still some exciting stuff going on in the Swedish Hockey League. I mean, there's still some places to be won. We're only about a third, halfway through the season, just over halfway, I think I remember, from what we mentioned last week. So I'll take you through the standings and I'll get Chris's thoughts again. So first off, in first place in the league, we have Rögle BK, 67 points in 33 games. They have 1 game in hand on second place Frölunda and 2 points more. So a nice cushion to have at this point in the season, but nothing set in stone, of course. So then you have Frölunda and the Växjö Lakers with 65 points and 63 points respectively, both with 34 games played. You have Luleå that's also tied with points with Växjö, but they have 3 games in hand on Frölunda and Växjö and 2 games in hand on Luleå, so they could jump up to first place if they play well enough. Then you've kind of got the drop-off point. You've got Åbro with 57 points in 32 games, Leksands with 52 points in 33 games. There's even more of a drop-off there as well. And then you have Skellefteå, Djurgården, Färjestad and Oskarshamn taking up the kind of quarter-final spots, or the round of 8 spots, 50 points, 47, 45 and 37 respectively. So once again, Oskarshamn kind of holding on to that 10th seed by the skin of their teeth, really. Then you have the Malmö Redhawks, 36 points in 31 games played. I wouldn't be surprised if they jumped up to that 10th seed, given the fact that they've got 2 games in hand. HV 71, 4 points back after that with 32 points in 32 games. So basically a solid 500 team, which, as you can see in the Swedish Hockey League, doesn't get you very far. And then 13th and 14th in the play-out rounds, according to Flash Scores, you have Brynäs IF and Linköpings with 31 and 30 points respectively. However, Brynäs IF has 5 games in hand on the teams around them, so all it takes is a win or 2 and they can jump up into the safe category, but whether they make it into the playoffs is another matter entirely. Chris, your thoughts on the Swedish League?
Very much the same as what you've just said, really. The top 4, I think, pretty much are going to be the top 4. They've got a decent gap already. There's quite a bit of a drop-off to our... I mean, and granted, it's only a couple of games, but, those are very much the teams that you'd expect to see around the top, the Champions Hockey League caliber teams. Get it down towards the bottom. There aren't massive drop-offs through like there are in the KHL. I think even, Linköpings and Brynäs, they're not out of it, particularly when it's 3 points for a win. You get a couple of results go your way, and all of a sudden you're out of that play-out sections. Linköpings, of course, getting the 4-2 victory over Oskarshamn a couple of days ago. That was the first win since sacking the old head coach.
True.
Swedish Hockey League, there's like I say, quite a bit longer to go in the Swedish Hockey League, I believe. They are going through until the 11th of March, but we are still getting towards the business end. There's about 15 or so games left in the Swedish Hockey League. So again, it's going to be, we're going to start in a couple of weeks, really starting to look at the last 10 game run-ins of some of these teams that are on the edge of the playoffs and the edge of the play-out zones and things like that around Europe, and seeing how they do.
Exactly, and I think the fact that the Swedish Hockey League has a play-out round compared to the KHL, which all of the teams stay there, makes it that little bit extra exciting, and kind of seeing like, the difference could be 1 or 2 points between having to fight to not be relegated into the Allsvenskan or staying up for another season. So it's going to get really exciting. Essentially, the Swedish Hockey League is about a fortnight behind the KHL. By the end of January, we'll be talking as if we were talking about the KHL now. So there's going to be some interesting matchups there. I'm really curious to see who takes that first spot by the end of the season, because there's 4 teams that it's still all to play for, and all it takes is for one of them to go on a bit of a run. Like Luleå, for example, they've had games in hand. They've won 4 out of their last 5, got points in 5 straight. So, they've kind of a little bit come out of nowhere, and they're tying the Växjö Lakers for 3rd place, and they're only 4 points back, and they're 3 games in hand. So all it takes is 2 wins. They're up in 1st place. Could you imagine if Luleå came with kind of like a late season push with all of their games in hand and managed to take the Swedish Hockey League title? That'd be pretty impressive. I'll give them that. So that's the second league. Let's move on to the third league in Europe, which is the Finnish Liga. So, Chris, do you want to take us through the standings for the Finnish Liga?
Yeah, so the Finnish Liga, they are roughly 24, 25 games playing. We've got Lukko at the top, 54 points, 25 games. Ilves in second. They've got a game in hand, but they're 5 points back. It's quite close at the top as well. The Pelicans on 48, IFK Helsinki 44, Koko 42, and Kalpa 41. So that's the top 6 that get those buys into the quarterfinals. Are still relatively tight. There's a bit of a drop-off, but not much, to Tappara, Karpat, Turku and Vasan Sport, who are on 37, 36, 36 and 33. And they're in the round of 16, so to speak, in the playoffs. Asat, Saipai, Jukurit, JYP and Hämeenlinna at the foot of the table. The jump really is to JYP and Hämeenlinna. Everybody else has kind of got a chance of getting in. Jukurit in 13th on 29 points, only 4 points back from those playoff spots. Saipai are only 3 points back, and they've got 2 games in hand over the majority of teams as well. TPS Turkey, you'd expect to potentially jump up a bit when they play their games in hand. Again, a team with plenty of pedigree in there as well. But again, it's just ticking along quite nicely, really. There's not a great deal to report week to week.
Yeah, pretty much. I think it's interesting, though, because I've got the flash scores up as it stands right now, and as we're talking, there's games being played on Tuesday, the 19th of January.
Yeah.
And Tappara, Tampere, they're currently up in 7th with a 3-0 lead over Jyp Jyväskylä, who are obviously in 14th in the league. And that's meant that both Karpat and TPS Turku have dropped to a place in the standings, and they've basically leapfrogged over both of them. So it's still very close, kind of the middle of the pack, the 7th to the 10th spots. You could even say Tappara, if they keep up their pace, they still could be competitive with kind of Kuku and Kalpa as well, but with those two teams also winning their games or leading in those games 1-0 and 3-1 respectively, it's very much kind of Lukko's league to lose at this point, or as it looks right now, doesn't it, Chris?
Yeah, it does. They're 5 points clear. Yes, a couple of teams have got games in hand around them, but it's always nice being near the top of the table because you're completely in control of what you do there. If you keep picking up wins, then teams can't catch you. It's a difficult one because sometimes it's easier to be at the top and know you're completely in control, but then sometimes it's easier to be the chaser because you've got the motivation every game to get that victory, to try and close the gap. But Lukko again. The regulation wins that they've got. They either win or they don't. They don't take it to extra time anywhere. It's just they're the only team to have done that. We'll see how it keeps ticking along throughout the month of January, and as that starts to tick towards the business end of the season, see if Lukko holds strong or if they bottle it.
Because by the looks of it, the Liga season is about halfway through, isn't it? They play about 50 games.
It's about that, yeah.
Yeah, it's something along those lines. Obviously, we've mentioned several times in recent episodes the 2-week break they had to take over the Christmas period and in kind of early to mid-December. It's really interesting. I didn't even realise until you mentioned it that Lukko haven't had to go to overtime or a shootout in order to decide any of their 25 games so far this season. And like you mentioned, Chris, the whole... it's always good to be at the top of the standings if you can keep chipping away and picking up wins. Lukko have done that. 4 wins in their last 5 games. They're 18-7-0 this season. So a really good showing from them so far. But as we've seen with several of the other leagues, especially the KHL and the SHL, primarily the SHL more so than the KHL, we'll look at these standings. There'll be that 5-point gap, but all it takes is for Lukko to drop a couple of games and then Eels and the Pelicans to win a couple of games, and it goes back to being super competitive. So it'll be very exciting to see how the Finnish Liga matches up, because obviously this will be one of the teams that we discuss their regular seasons in a lot more detail as the months go on, because we'll be getting into the playoffs for a lot of the other teams. Maybe we can even do some season reviews for the teams that miss the playoffs in some of the European leagues as they go along, because they'll be filtering in quite nicely as we go along.
Obviously once the KHL gets into the playoffs and we go, right, this team's 2-0 up, this team's 1-0 up, there's less to talk about. So
yeah. And also, at the end of the KHL season, we can dedicate an episode to just talking about the KHL season, rounding it off, the top scorer, the best goaltenders, all of the awards and stuff, kind of doing a season review of all of the teams that missed out on the postseason, and then kind of leading into the next episode. Yeah, go for it.
The Liga goes through until the middle of April, so it's still got plenty to run.
Okay, perfect. So we've got a lot to talk about over the coming months. That's good, because when half of the teams from the KHL and the SHL have been eliminated from the playoffs, we're going to need some leagues to talk about, because otherwise we're going to run out of things to say.
Yeah.
But regardless, let's move on to the Swiss National League as it stands right now. So, as it stands, we have Zug with 63 points in 27 games. They've really pulled away with this league, and it's very much theirs to lose at this point. You then have the Zurich Lions with 50 points in 26 games, Fribourg with 48 in 27, Geneva Servette with 43 in 24, Lausanne with 42 in 21 games played, so they could be a bit of a dark horse here. Then HC Davos, who started the year not particularly very well, 37 points in 27 games to take the final quarter-final spot on the first round bye. However, hot on their heels, you've got HC Lugano and Biel with 36 points respectively, yet Lugano has played 25 games, Biel has played 26, so they have games in hand on Davos. Then you have HC Ambri Piotta and the Rapperswil Jona Lakers with 30 points and 29 points respectively. Then in the relegation zone, you have the Langau Tigers with 22 points, SC Bern with 19 points, but we're going to be talking a lot more about the Swiss League in one of our bonus clips this week. So to sum up, as far as we're aware, there isn't any relegation this year in the Swiss League, and there's not going to be any relegation for the next couple of seasons. So our kind of discussion last week about SC Bern potentially going down to the National League B or the Second League or whatever they're calling it from now on, that's not going to happen. So they're going to get the chance to stay up. Those lucky buggers, the one season they don't do very well, they get to stay up and don't have to worry about relegation. But Chris, what are your thoughts on the Swiss League?
Yeah, there's been a couple of games since we last spoke, and some teams have picked up a couple of wins in that, and some teams have struggled. The thing that jumps out to me is Lausanne, who are in fifth and yet have 6 games in hand.
Yeah.
There's the potential of about 18 points in that, which would jump them up to 60, and all of a sudden they're right up there.
Yeah.
I think they can easily, with the games in hand they've got, they can easily jump up to second.
Yeah.
They only have to win 3 of the 6 games in hand to jump up to second. So, expect to see them climb the league table before the end of the season. And again, it's just that really tight midfield. You've got 3 teams within a point of each other. Who's going to get that buy into the round of the playoffs? Have that rest. We know that sometimes that can work against you, because if you have a bit of if you have a week and a half rest, then sometimes it works against you. We'll have to see what happens with that this year. But I think it's just going to be interesting to have a look at that midfield. Obviously, this year I think it's kind of harder to tell this year than any other year, because there've been so many postponements and teams have got games in hand, left, right, and centre. It's almost difficult to see where teams lie. Then again, saying that, the Elite League always kind of had teams going left, right, and centre with different games played because of rink availability and what have you. Anyway, so we'll just keep our eye on it, and as I said, expect to see Lausanne climb up the table when they play their games in hand.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, us hockey fans here in the UK, we're used to having some teams of having played 7 or 8 more games than some of the others, because then you factor in the Challenge Cup and everything like that, and it's just all over the place, and nobody knows how many games have been played.
Things like, take Nottingham, for example, where there aren't concerts throughout the winter, so they cram home games in, and then we end up with like an 8-game road trip towards the end of the season and things like that.
Absolutely. The one question I do have, because we talked about Bern in a lot of detail last week, but I mean, they're 19 points in 19 games. They have, up to 9 games in hand compared to some of the other teams. So say if they did go on a miracle run and win all of those games, where would that put them in the league then?
8 games, 24 potential points, puts them 43, so 5th.
Wow, so that really does go to show you the difference between last place and a position with a first round bye. Literally, if Bern, which, I mean, based on the season they've had so far, it's unlikely, but you never know. They won their most recent game, so anything can happen, right, guys? But imagine if they go on a tear and they win all of those games, they'll be in a position where they've gone from the bottom of the league all the way to 5th. Or battling for a first round bye. So obviously we're still quite early on. We're kind of halfway through the Swiss League also, and they've had their fair share of troubles. But it's kind of when we get to this point in the season, looking at those kind of mid-table battlegrounds is so fascinating to me. Like looking at the Davos, Lugano and Biel situation there. Then you've got Lausanne, Geneva and Fribourg kind of battling it out as well. It's so interesting to see like the little mini campaigns that are going on through the war that is the regular season. So yeah, it's going to be really fun indeed. Shall we move on to the German DEL, Chris?
Yeah, we'll briefly touch on to the DL because there's not a lot that's happened.
Yeah.
So obviously they're still playing the North-South split, and they're still less than 10 games played, so I'll really just run through it. Bremerhaven, they've won the last 5 in a row. They're top of the league. We did mention the other week. Was it the it's the Roosters who had won all of them? One of the teams had won all of their games so far. Anyway,
I think it was Bremerhaven. Yeah.
Well, no, because they've won the last few, but
okay,
yeah.
maybe.
So they're top of the table. Berlin just behind them, but Bremerhaven are now a game out in front. The team at the bottom is Krefeld Penguin. They've lost all of their games, conceded 38 goals in 8 games, which is an average of just under 5. Yeah, so not great for them. They're already looking like they might struggle to get into the playoffs even at this early stage. They're 5 games back within 8 games played. In the south, Adler Mannheim towards the top. Red Bull Munich climbing up as we thought they would do with a couple of wins on the bounce. Augsburg Panthers, a couple of wins on the bounce as well. The Nuremberg Ice Tigers, though, struggling at the bottom, having lost 2 in a row. The Straubing Tigers as well, having lost 4 out of their last 5 games. Not great there. They were 1-1-1, and now they're 2-5-1. So not great for the Tigers. But yeah, not great amount to talk about in the DEL because it's so early days.
Do you remember how many games the DEL season's going to be this year? Because I can't remember off the top of my head.
Off the top of my head, I can't. I think it's about 42.
Yeah, so let's take that as the example. 42 games. I've heard a lot of talk in the NHL over the last couple of weeks because the NHL season began last week as we recorded our episode. There's a lot of talk about if it's kind of more preseason hockey the first week or so, and I would imagine it's very much the same with the DEL because they've been off for so long, similar to the NHL. But also, it's kind of like, it takes a little while for them to get into proper game form because they haven't had any preseason games, had a very short training camp, most of these teams. So it's difficult for them to kind of come out swinging out of the jump. However, the interesting thing is a lot of people have mentioned, if it's really easy in a 56-game season. If you drop most of your first 9-10 games or so, it's going to be really difficult for you to be able to jump back into it and kind of compete for a spot if you go well for the rest of the year. And I feel like the Krefeld Penguin are kind of in that situation right now. They've dropped almost their first 10 games of the year. They've been outscored or allowed roughly 5 goals against every single game. We could be in a position right now where this whole run that they've had at the start of the season, no matter how good they carry on for the rest of the year, this might be the thing that ultimately stops them from making it to the playoffs. So that'd be a real tough run, wouldn't it, Chris?
Yeah, it would, and we see that quite often, particularly like the NHL's experiencing it this year for the first time in a long time with the shortened season. We're used to having like 50-odd game seasons over here in Europe.
Yeah.
And it does kind of make each game matter a little bit more because, as you said, if you don't play well in the first month of the season, you're already finding yourselves 5 games back from the rest from the playoffs. And don't forget that these teams are going to be picking up wins as well. So, it is a real tough ask even in this early stage for Krefeld. I mean, it's not impossible by any stretch of the imagination. No. And, they could turn it around, but the longer it goes on, the more they're going to be desperate to get that first win on the board.
Yeah, let alone compete for the playoffs by the end of the year. It's kind of and it just really eats away at the team's confidence when they're trying everything they can and they lose 8, 9, maybe even 10 games on the trot. I do find it interesting though that they've got the Berlin Ice Bears ranked as the second team in the North Division with 14 points, whereas the Roosters are third place with 17. It sounds, by the looks of it, it's very similar to what the KHL does with their divisions, maybe kind of having the top team from each division takes the first and second spot, regardless of how many points. I just wanted to point that out because I've noticed that because by the North standings, the Ice Bears should be in 4th place, but they sit in 2nd. So there you go. Let's take.
I haven't spotted that. I'll have a look.
Yeah, I've noticed it on Flash Scores right now.
Just check it's not an issue.
Because Bremerhaven have 18 points, then the Islo and Roosters have 17 points, but the Roosters are in 3rd place, whereas Berlin are in 2nd place with 14 points in 7 games. Maybe they count the games in hand as well. Maybe I don't know.
Looking at this, I think they are doing on the DEO website. There's another column, and it looks as though they're arranging it by points per game.
I see. Okay, fair enough.
Just in
that
case
makes sense.
there's cancellations and stuff.
That's a smart idea.
Berlin have got 2 points per game, whereas the Roosters have got 1.889 points per game.
Yeah, and because Berlin have played less games, they've got 2 games in hand on the Roosters. Right, that makes sense. See, this is why I need you around, Chris. You just help me out with all of these little points. Like, you don't even know them yourselves. You take 2 seconds, you find it, and it's wonderful. We've fixed the whole problem. So let's move on to the kind of the last of the bigger leagues within Europe, and that is, of course, the Czech Extraliga. So let me take you through the standings of the Czech Extraliga. We have HC Sparta Prague in first place, currently winning 3-2 over Česk Budějovic, who are the last place team in the league. 70 points in 35 games. They've got a nice little cushion up at top. Then Mlada Boleslav with 65 points in 34 games. Oceleri Trinec currently dropping to third place because Boleslav are playing Mountfield HK and beating them 2-1 at the moment. Sparta Prague just scored again. It's 4-2 to Sparta Prague. So there you go. So Oceleri Trinec have dropped to third place as it stands right now, but they do have 2 games in hand on Mlada Boleslav and 1 point behind. Then you have Billy Tigri Liberec with a 2-0 lead over HC Pulzen HC Pulzen. 60 points in 34 games. Pulzen, the aforementioned team, taking the first of the round of 8 spots. 59 points in 34 games, so very close there still. Mountfield HK, 57 points in 34 games. Karlovy Vary, 54 points in 33 games. Then you have Pardubice with 53, so that's pretty much kind of 5th to 8th is still competing. Then you have Kometa Brno kind of by themselves. Vitka Weiss, Olomouc, and Litvinov taking the final first round playoff berths with 41, 39, and 38 points respectively. Then you have Zlin with 32 points and Česk Budějovic, probably not going to make the playoffs, all things considered. 24 points in 34 games. So by the looks of it, Sparta Prague are very much up there by themselves. However, Mlada Boleslav, if they get a win, they're still very close. Then Trinec, kind of the top 3 is still competing for it. Liberec maybe, but then it's kind of 4th to 7th is competing. 4th to 8th maybe. Then Kometa Brno. Then 10th to 12th and everybody else. What do you think about the Czech League, Chris?
Yeah, very much what you've just said, really. Nobody's on a massively hot run. It's relatively tight in places. You've got 2nd to 4th is quite close. 5th to 8th is quite close. Kometa Brno still kind of in no man's land as they have been for a while. It's starting to look as though those 12 teams might be the ones that make the playoffs. Zlin are 6 points back, which is a couple of games, but Litvinov have got a couple of games in hand. Again, as you said, Česk Budějovic are now 14 games back. 14 points back, which is a good 5 games. And again, Litvinov have got games in hand. So again, it's not impossible, but starting to become a tall ask for some of those teams at the bottom.
Definitely. And I would imagine we're kind of in the latter half of the Extraliga season. So once again, it's going to be one of those leagues that within the next couple of weeks, we're really going to be sitting here going, okay, every point matters here now, folks. And we might have the first place team, because if Sparta Prague goes on a bit of a run, they've got points in their last 5 games, but it's looking like if they beat Česk Budějovic, they will have won 4 of their last 6 games and had points in 6 straight. So it's kind of those little runs like that, isn't it? Like picking up those points. Whether you lose the game, picking up that extra point or 2, that's going to make the difference down the stretch, isn't it?
Yeah. So with the 52 game season of the Czech Extraliga, you're less than 20 games to go now for the vast majority of these teams. So you're looking at like Česk Budějovic at the bottom. For them to get into there, they've got to win a good number. You're probably talking kind of mid-teens of their games, kind of 14, 15.
Yeah.
And obviously you've got to win then 25% more of your games in Litvinov. So it does start to become a tall ask. I think a lot of the teams will be focusing on now trying to just cement their position. Sparta Prague, Boleslav, Trinec up at the top. Trinec's got some games in hand. They're going to look to push the top, increase that gap to Liberec. And Liberec are going to be looking over their shoulders to try and avoid to try and secure that bye into the second round of the playoffs.
Absolutely. So that's the final one of the big kind of European leagues. Let's quickly take you through 4 different of the sort of minor, kind of lesser known European leagues. Because once again, to remind you, we're not looking at the Polish league this year because it's pretty this episode and until the regular season is done, because pretty much we know who's making the playoffs and it's pretty much all figured out by then. So let's start with the Ice Hockey League, the Austrian Hockey League. So we have HC Bolzano in first place, 68 points in 32 games played, which is really impressive considering that Furhava AV19, 67 points in 36 games. So 1 point back from first place. However, Bolzano have 4 games in hand, so I would expect them to stay up there, especially since they've got points in their last 3 games. Then you have Klagenfurter with 62 points in 33 games. The Vienna Capital, 61 points in 33 games. Then there's the bit of the drop with Red Bull Salzburg, 53 points in 30 games. Dornbirner with 52 in 33. Then you have the Graz 99ers, who welcome back former Cardiff Devils netminder and podcast guest Ben Bounds to their roster, helped them get a win as well. A 2-1 overtime win, I believe, is what Chris told me. 43 points in 33 games, so a real drop-off compared to Dornbirn and Graz. Gareth Bounds was healthy all year. Who knows? Who knows what could have happened? Then you have Innsbruck with 39 points in 33 games, Villach with 38 points in 33 games, Bratislava also 38 points in 33 games, and then the Black Wings Lings, or the Black Wings Lins, I should say, they have officially made their place in the losers stage with 22 points in 33 games. So Chris, do you want to give us your thoughts on the Austrian League and just remind us how the winners-losers stage works and when they're roughly going to go into that?
Yeah, so what happens is they play, I believe it's 40 games in the regular season. So you play everybody home and away twice, and then the league splits. So the top 5 teams then play each other again home and away once, and the bottom 6 teams play each other home and away once. And then the top 8 teams make playoffs. So you already know that, Linz are going to be in the losers stage. It's looking as though, it's not impossible, but you're looking at everybody, probably including Graz 99ers down, are going to be in the losers stage because there's that 9-point gap.
Yeah.
When you only got 7 games left to play, to gain 3 games over your rivals to get into that. In fact, it's a 10-point gap back to Salzburg to get into that winners stage. So it does start to get a bit of a tall order for those teams. But so what they'll be focusing on now really is, trying to get as many points as they can in this regular season, because the points don't reset. They still carry over. You don't. Everyone doesn't start on 0 again. So if you've got, for example, let's just take Graz for example. At the moment, they've got a 5-point cushion. Their focus right now is going to be getting as many points as possible to try and increase that gap, so that if anything does go wrong in the losers stage, they might still be able to get themselves into those playoffs. But, what you've got to remember there as well is that if we take the bottom team, Innsbruck 39 to Bolzano at 68, that's 29 points. It's 10 games. It's not, because it's 3 points for a win. It's not the most wide open league in the world. There's very few games go against you to find yourself dropping down the league.
Yeah.
There isn't a 60-point gap and there's a massive gulf in class. So, those playoffs might be ones to watch, because you could see a potential for some teams to, come unstuck against teams lower down.
Absolutely, and kind of some teams might jump up and some teams might end up, for example, the kind of 4th, 5th seed. If they're playing the 1st, 2nd, 3rd seed for the rest of the season, they might be taking many more losses than they usually would. And if the 6th to the 11th seeds are playing each other, the kind of higher seeded teams might pick up a load of wins against their opponents. So you might see a bit of a shift in the midfield. But essentially at this point, until the winners and the loser stages get started, basically the final question there is whether Salzburg or Dornbirn are going to be sitting in that final spot, because there's 1 point between them. Yes, Salzburg have 3 games in hand compared to them, so that they very much have the advantage here, but who knows? Maybe once all the teams have played 40 games, they might be 1 point behind because they didn't quite get it done, and Dornbirn get to go to the winners stage.
Yeah.
So it's going to be very interesting.
The one thing I don't know, and someone in the comments might be able to tell me, and I don't know for sure, is if the team in, 6th place, if the team at 6th place wins all their games in the loser stage, and the team in 5th place loses all their games in the winners stage, I think they still can't drop below 5th, if you know what I mean.
Okay. Oh, I thought they could.
I think you can end up, I don't know.
Yeah.
Someone might be able to tell me.
So either it's going to be they switch positions for the end of the season, or it's going to be a case of the 5th seed could have less points than the 6th seed, but because the 6th seed played the losers and the 5th seed played the winners, they stay in their respective groups. That's going to be interesting to figure out. Well, I mean, this is the first time we've looked at the Austrian Ice Hockey League, so we have no idea. So
on my work computer, apparently I've hit the maximum number of pages I can look at elite prospects. So I'm going to have a look on here and see if I can.
Oh, I hate it when that happens.
I'll have a look on my laptop.
Yeah, go for it. I guess it's going to be one of two situations, right? Either they're going to have the top 5 teams secured and be like, okay, these are the winners' teams. Nobody can drop below the final berth in the winners stage. Because then, how does the playoffs work?
Yeah, that's exactly what happens.
Okay,
that's exactly what happens.
So they lock the groups
based
completely.
on last season.
Okay.
Yeah. So last season, Graz 99ers were 5th place in the winners' stage.
Okay.
So they still took the 5th seed, but then 6th, 7th, and 8th place. So the 3 teams that made the playoffs from the loser stage were all better than the Graz 99ers. But then obviously the playoffs were cancelled.
So that's interesting. So having a good kind of first half / first 2/3 of the season can guarantee that you lock up the 5th seed, regardless of how well you play for. That's a really interesting concept, and that's what I love about doing this podcast. Could you imagine any other league around like North America having that kind of concept? It's so like European hockey. I love it.
The Scottish Football Premiership has a similar system.
Oh yes, of course.
Well, I know you wouldn't know that, but the Scottish Football Premiership has a similar system. But yeah, so you can't. So even if you win all your games in the losers stage, you can't get higher than 6th. So
right.
I suppose that does make sense. You can't go appallingly for the first half of the season, win your last. Win the last 10 games of the season, and all of a sudden end up with the 3rd seed overall.
True, but then again, it makes me wonder what's the point in the winners and the losers stage in the first place? Then just do it like a normal regular season standings, you know?
I suppose.
I don't know. We're not Austrian hockey fans primarily, so if anybody
any Austrian hockey fans any Austrian hockey fans that are listening, do you like this system, or would you rather just have a complete finished table system?
Yeah, absolutely. Do let us know, because it's very unique, but it's very European hockey, and I love it. So let's move on to one of the final leagues we're going to be looking at. We're going to go through these ones quickly. The Danish Metalligaen. So we have 3 teams that have made the playoffs. I'm pretty sure that's the same as last week. We have Rungsted with 71.5 points. Once again, the league that has 0.5 points. It's basically how we've known the Danish Metal League, the league that has the 0.5 points for some of their teams. So 71.5 points in 33 games for Rungsted, Aalborg 68 points in 33 games, and Esbjerg Energy 67 points in 33 games. So still the chance for Esbjerg to jump up to 2nd, and you know it's still competitive enough that any of those 3 teams could end up 1st by the end of the season. Then you have Herning Blue Fox with also, sorry, I didn't realise because my webcam is kind of in the way. Yeah, Herning Blue Fox have also guaranteed a spot in the playoffs. I didn't realise that. Sorry, Herning Blue Fox and Blue Fox fans. 58.5 points in 35 games for them. So basically half the playoff spots have been decided so far in the season. Then you've got Frederikshavn with 49.5 points in 34 games. Sondersjøk with 45. Herlev with 42.5. And the Rodovra Mighty Bulls, something like that. 36 points in 35 games. There's always a team the name that I mess up every single week. It's usually that one.
There always one, yeah.
Yeah, there's always one.
Yeah, so 4 teams have made the playoffs here. It's a 48-game regular season.
Okay, so we're getting close.
So Odense have got 12 games to go. That's a maximum of 36 points, which gets them to 57, hence why Herning have now secured their playoffs. So expect the other teams to rapidly start to get into the playoffs as well, because obviously that's going to drop by 3 every single game.
Yep.
So it's only going to take a couple of games for Frederikshavn to then get in there. It can only take a couple of games after that for Sondersjøk to get in there, 1 game after that for Herlev to get in there. So give it a couple of weeks and we're going to be in a situation where, like, if Odense keep playing as poorly as they have been, 7 of the 8 teams are going to get in. And then even Rodovra are going to secure their place before too long as well.
So basically, Odense, it's up to you. Figure out which way you want to go and stick to it. So let's move on to the penultimate league, which is the Norwegian Fjordkraft Ligaen. So we was very close up the top of the standings here still so far this season. We have Storhammer with 53 points in 24 games. We have Friskaska with 52 in 23 games. Valerenga with 50 points in 25. And the Stavanger Oilers with 48 in 24. So top 3, kind of top 4 if you want to put Stavanger in there as well. They have won 5 straight games, so, don't count them out yet. Then you have Lillehammer with 44 points in 24 games, Stjernen with 39 in 24, Manglerud with 22 in 22 games, so basically from 6th to 7th, the massive drop like we saw last week. And then Sparta Sarpsborg, they really haven't done a very good job with their games in hand they've had all season, lost 5 straight games and points in one of their last 5. Then you have Narvik with 11 points in 27 games and Gruna with 10 points in 20 games. So very much top 3, top 4 competing for it. Then you've got Lillehammer and arguably Stjernen, I should say, kind of there in the middle field. Then after that, it's basically anybody's guess at this point, isn't it, Chris?
Yeah, we're talking only about 15 or so games left to go in that as well. It's not a big league, not a big season. And you look at Spartak Sarpsborg, who, they've not done very well, but they've got so many games in hand. Manglerud as well. There's such a massive gap, though, between 6 and 7. You're talking kind of 7 and 10, 2 of the 4 teams. We know from last year that Narvik and Gruna should have been relegated last year, and they weren't because the season didn't finish. It looks like they're going to do the same this year.
Okay, fair enough. So there you go. That's the Norwegian Fjordkraftligaen. And last but by no means least, the French League Magnus. We've actually had some games played here, which is incredible because there's actually teams that have double digits. Like, oh my word. So we have Rouen at 30 points in 10 games, won every single game so far this season, and they're doing a good job while they're doing it. Then you have Nice with 23 points in 13 games, Angers with 18 points in 10 games, Gap with 15 points in 9 games, so one of the only teams still in single digits, Bordeaux with 15 points also, but 4 games more played with 13, Amiens also with 15 points with 10 games played, so they're closer to Gap than Bordeaux is. Then you have Mulhouse, 14 points in 11 games, Grenoble, 13 points in 8 games, that rounds off the playoff spot so far. Then you have Anglet with 13 points in 11 games, Chamonix Mont Blanc with 12 points in 10 games, Cergy Pontoise with 8 points in 7 games, and Briançon with 7 points in 10 games. So still not really sure what's happening with the French League Magnus as it stands right now.
It's all very kind of bitty. So as we said last week, they've kind of cancelled their season.
Right.
And now they're filling these weeks with the games to try and get everybody back up to the same number.
Yeah.
So all the postponements from earlier on in the season, they're trying to fit them in now. So some teams like Cergy Pontoise are playing like 6 games, whereas some teams like Nice just aren't playing.
Very true. Very true.
So it is very kind of itty and bitty. And it's one of the kind of the minor leagues that we need to not spend too long on because you're getting like kind of 3 or 4 games a week, really.
Yeah, there's not really anything too crazy happening. So that's
and it's so early in the season.
Exactly. So that's the final league to look at so far in Europe. Now, before we move on to the quiz that Chris has got planned for me, which I have no idea what's going to go on, I just want to mention to you that this episode of the Europuck podcast is also brought to you by Crosscheck Clothing. Crosscheck Clothing is a UK-based hockey apparel brand that provides high-quality clothing to help you rep the greatest sport on earth in style. Now, we all know that wearing your favourite team's jersey when you're watching a hockey game can be great fun, but it isn't very practical when you're going about your day-to-day life. Well, with Crosscheck's wide variety of hockey-themed t-shirts and hoodies, whether you're at the rink, going about your day, or just simply chilling at home, you can show off your love for the sport, look great, and feel good all at the same time. I've personally bought half a dozen items from Crosscheck's collection over the last few years. I really like the stuff that they do, and I've got to be honest, I'm really glad that we managed to get them on board and sponsor this podcast, as it gives me a chance to talk about how much I love the variety of styles they provide. Whether it's the more obvious kind of in-your-face hockey designs, or the more neutral and subtle looks that you can wear for any occasion, Crosscheck have got you covered in any situation. Listeners of our show can now get 15% off any order over £30 by using code EPP15. This is an exclusive offer that you won't find anywhere else, ladies and gentlemen, so make sure you take a look at Crosscheck's collection and let them know that we sent you either via their Twitter, Instagram or Facebook pages. Crosscheck also ships all over Europe and North America, so whether you're across the pond, whether you're somewhere else in Europe, they may be a UK-based brand, that doesn't matter, they will ship it to you if you are anywhere in those areas. You can get in on the action, you should, because they provide some great clothes. I wouldn't be saying it if I hadn't bought half a dozen of their stuff over the last few years. So to get 15% off any order over £30, head on over to shop.crosscheckclothing.co.uk and use promo code EPP15. That's shop.crosscheckclothing.co.uk and promo code EPP15 for 15% off any order over £30. A big thank you to Crosscheck Clothing for sponsoring this episode of the podcast. Right, Chris, give me your quiz. Let's hear it.
Yeah, for those, like, Hayden will know as well. And for those of you new to the podcast, like, I have that kind of smirk on my face and glint in my eye that he has come to dread when we've done these quizzes before.
Yeah.
Right, so I'm kind of thinking I might try and make this a bit of a regular thing and kind of try and come with a theme around it.
Good idea.
I was looking, the problem is that I struggled to find a theme. I struggled to find ice hockey questions relating to National Popcorn Day, which it is today.
I see. Okay.
So I went with one of yesterday's themes, which was National Blue Day.
Okay.
Apparently the day where most people in the UK feel upset and down because this is where Christmas being over finally hits people and they're in January blues. And so apparently yesterday, as we're recording this, was like the most depressing day in the UK.
I had heard something about that, which is, hey, yes, depression.
Yeah, so I thought I'd kind of do something to make us, or more importantly, me, very happy, which is to make Hayden go, oh, boy, and
basically, my suffering is Chris's joy.
Yeah. So it's 5 questions, all themed around the colour blue.
I see. Okay.
Loosely.
I see.
Question one. How thick is the blue line on a IIHF ice rink?
Oh, jeez. Wow, you're really starting off with a difficult one. God damn, Chris. Okay, so how thick? So how thick is a blue line for IIHF? It's not NHL, it's IIHF, right?
Yeah, how thick is, well, it might end up being the same. I just typed in IIHF.
I see, fair enough. Okay, so how thick is the blue line?
When you've seen them paint it, how thick is it?
I guess it depends how many C's, like, the word thick has at the end of it. No? Okay, how thick is the blue line? See, I've got a kind of idea, but I feel like it's either going to be, like, spot on or, like, so far over that I'm like, okay, this isn't good.
Centimetres or inches is fine, I don't mind which.
Okay, I'm going to go inches. Okay. I'm going to say the blue line is 5 inches.
No, the blue line is 12 inches. It's a foot long.
Okay, fair enough.
30 centimetres, which is pretty much a foot.
Okay, so I wasn't sure. I was thinking kind of 5-6 inches, and I thought, okay, this is either going to be really far off, but I managed to go really far off, so well done me.
Okay, the NHL in the 20... I suppose this is technically still called the 2020-21 season.
You can essentially just call it the 2021 season, you know, because it's only being played in 2021, right?
Has players from 15 European countries in it.
Okay.
How many of those European countries have blue somewhere in their flag?
Oh, my word. Okay.
So you've got to try and know how many, list the countries and then know how many have blue in.
Okay, so how many countries did you say?
There are 15 countries.
15.
How many of them have blue in their flag?
That's 15 European countries.
There are 15 European countries.
My God.
How many have
Okay,
blue
so we've
in
obviously
their
got
flag?
Sweden, Finland, they both have blue.
Yeah.
We've got...
That's 2.
Yeah, that's 2. I'm off to a great start. There's...
it's somewhere between 1 and 15.
Yeah, exactly. There's Austria, but they don't have blue. There's Denmark. They do have blue, I believe. They have like a tiny bit of blue. Or am I thinking of like Iceland or something? No, Denmark don't have blue in theirs, do they? Oh, come on. Chris, help me out here, buddy.
Okay, no, Denmark don't have blue.
Okay, fine. So Denmark don't have blue. That's only 4 countries. Russia, they have blue, obviously. Then you've got
that's 3.
Are there any Kazakhstani players in the NHL this season?
Kazakhstan's not in Europe anyway.
Fair point. I know Bulgaria. There's a player, Alexander Georgiev of the Rangers. But technically, he's also Russian, but I'll say Bulgarian because he was born in Bulgaria. That doesn't have blue.
Well, that doesn't have blue.
That doesn't have blue. So what I've got 6.
You've got
so
3.
far.
You've got Sweden, Finland, and Russia.
And and I'm trying to go through all the different European countries. Germany, they don't have blue, and they're another country that's got players there. Alexander Texier of the Columbus Blue Jackets is French. The French flags. That's another one. So I've got 4 that have blue in their flag,
right.
and I've currently gone through 8 different countries. Oh my word! Switzerland, they don't have any blue in their flag.
What I'm loving is the fact that he goes, "Oh, Switzerland!" Oh,
Yeah,
they don't have blue.
Yeah, no, but like, because I've got the 2 things. This is the one with the amount of flags, as people will be able to see on the screen. Chris can't, obviously, but I've got one hand that's doing all of the different ones that do have blue, and one hand that doesn't. But I'm not forgetting all the countries that I've done. The Czech Republic, they have blue on theirs, so that's 5. Slovakia, they have blue on theirs, so that's 6. So that's I've got 9 countries that I've looked through right now. What are the other countries? I should know this. I'm thinking. What are the other 3 countries that I'm missing here? Well, not other 3. The other 6. What? I've got 6 plus 5, 11. So yeah, I'm missing 3, 4 different countries.
4 countries you're missing.
Oh, that's really irritating. Oh, I'm gonna kick myself because I can't remember. Like,
just have a guess then. So what have you got? You've got 6 countries with blue.
Yes, so far.
And you've got 4 to go. So you reckon you've got to be either 6, 7, 8, or 9.
I'm gonna go in the middle. I'm gonna go 8.
It's 9.
Oh no!
We've got Sweden with 96,
okay.
Finland 52, Russia 46, Czech Republic 32, Slovakia with 8,
yep.
France with 3,
yep.
Norway with 1,
Norway.
Netherlands with 1, and Slovenia with 1.
Oh, Slovenia. I wasn't sure if there were any Slovenian players in the league. Okay, fair enough.
Okay, so that's 0 for 2.
Stop it.
Okay, right. We've been through all of the leagues. How much were you paying attention? Blue is often a colour associated with being cold.
Okay.
Which team in the 11 leagues we cover here on the Europuck podcast currently has the longest cold streak? This is games without a single point.
Games that a single point. I feel like it's one of the more recent leagues that we looked at, because they were. It's I can't remember the teams' names now because I don't have them up on the screen. I feel like it's not from the Polish leagues. We didn't look at them so far this year. Or this episode. Why do I keep saying this year? Like, the year really hasn't been that long. We're only in week 2.
I didn't say we necessarily looked at them this episode. I said it's the 11 leagues we covered.
Oh, okay. Okay. Wait, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. Yeah, okay. So the Polish league is included then. So I'm going to imagine it's the, one team in the Polish league that isn't going to be making the playoffs this year. I cannot for the life of me remember their name. Because we didn't look at it this week, so it's completely, disappeared out of my brain. But am I along the right tracks?
Yes.
Okay, which team was it?
It's Gdansk.
That's it, Gdansk.
11 games.
Wow.
Feel free to play along and, pause the video and put your answers in the comments.
Oh, for sure, definitely.
Right. So,
2 more
11 games they have. Yes. So, everybody knows the Olympic rings.
Yes.
And the blue ring represents the European continent.
Okay.
In the IIHF World Rankings, is it the men's rankings or the women's rankings which has more European countries in the top 20? And I'll give you a bonus point if you know how many.
The top 20 of, in terms of
countries in the IIHF World Rankings.
Okay.
So in the men's World Rankings, there are X number of European teams.
Right.
In the women's top 20, there are X number of European teams. Which is more and how many?
I see. I'm going to go with the... is this include? So does the IHF rankings include NHL teams as well?
No, this is countries.
Oh, countries.
This is national sides.
So then surely it's going to be based on the amount of countries that... Wait, read that question out again?
So it's the national team rankings.
Right.
And I'm only looking at the top 20.
Top 20, okay.
National team rankings.
Okay.
Are there more European countries in the top 20 on the men's rankings or the women's rankings? And how many?
Now, part of me wants to say that it'd be the women's, because that's still it's still very much in its early stages in terms of building its international presence. Like there's hockey teams obviously all around Europe, of women's hockey teams and national teams, but obviously they don't really gain the exposure, or they haven't had as much longevity as kind of the men's game. So part of me wants to be like, well, obviously Canada, America, all of those teams are going to be up there for them because they're the best countries in the world, but also the women's game have them as well. And okay, so in the top 20, I'm going to say the women's, and the number of European countries that are in the top 20 of the women's IHF rankings, I'm going to say is 16.
Okay, you get 1 point.
Okay, that's better than nothing. I'll take that.
It's the men's rankings.
Oh, okay.
Has the more European countries, but there are 16.
Oh, so, you know what? I got the difficult bit right.
Yeah, the women have 15 European countries. So, of course, Canada and the USA are in both.
Yep.
South Korea are also in both.
Oh, wow, okay.
The other country in the men's rankings is Kazakhstan.
I see.
And in the women's, it's Japan and China.
Interesting. So, women's hockey in Asia seems to be doing quite well right now. Fair enough. Right, so we've got a final question, right?
Final question. So you've got 1 point out of a possible 5.
Yeah.
So right. When was the last time the World Championships, this is proper men's full-on World Championships, were won by a team wearing predominantly blue in the final?
Oh, that's a good question. Because obviously Sweden won it most recently, or they won it 2 years on the go, didn't they? But their jerseys are primarily yellow, so it's not going to be them. I would imagine it's got to be Finland, because Finland primarily wear blue on theirs. They won it this last year, didn't they? Because Capo Kakko got he won the World Championships with the team. So yeah, it's got to be the 2019 tournament, because Finland won it, right?
I'll give you half a point.
Okay. Why? Because
yes,
Finland won
it's
it?
Finland.
But it wasn't 2019.
But when they won it in 2019, they were in their white jerseys with blue trim.
Got it. Okay, so they were the away team. Fair enough.
Playing in predominantly blue, it was Finland back in 2011.
I would never have guessed that. So
because again, as you said, like Sweden have won it, but again, they've just got the blue trim with the predominantly yellow and the blue shorts, but predominantly blue. Finland 2011. So I'll give you 2 points out of a possible 7 from that.
I'll take that. You know what? I'll take that.
Next week, what is it? I might struggle again next week. It's Australia Day.
Okay.
National Peanut Brittle Day and National Spouses Day. So I might struggle to get ice hockey.
I mean, you could talk about like famous hockey players' partners or something, I guess.
I could try something like that, yes.
Or like two tandems of like both the man and the wife, or the two like male or female partners that both play hockey or something. You know, famous like couple.
So
I don't know.
Let us know how you did in the comment section.
Absolutely, yeah, that'd be really interesting to know. I mean, I gave it a good go. I wasn't expecting any of the questions. Like Chris didn't tell me anything about the questions that he was going to ask or what they were related on. So very much went in it like cold, as most of you were, because of the color blue. Hey, so yeah. So we've got one more thing to talk about here on the show this week before we do some bonus clip content for our YouTube channel. And that is, Chris wanted to go over some of the European players that have made their debuts in the NHL recently, and are the ones that are playing particularly very well. Because obviously in our bonus clip last week, that if you haven't watched it already, go and check out the Europuck Podcast YouTube channel. We discussed a lot of I'm just bringing up the images right now just so we need them. We discussed the several high-profile long-time European players that were making their NHL debuts over the coming weeks. And now Chris has found some of the rookies specifically that have spent a lot of time in Europe, whether it be on loan or whether it be because that's where they grew up and that's the system that they played through. And we just wanted to round off this episode by, just giving them a bit of a shout out and keeping track of some of the guys that we should be paying attention to in Europe. So Chris, take it away.
Right. So I'm looking here at the rookies. Top of the rookies is Kirill Kaprizov, who we mentioned in last week. Was it a bonus episode or main episode?
It was a bonus episode last week. Yeah, it actually goes out. It goes out the day after we've recorded this on the channel.
Yes, good point. He's got 4 points from 3 games, 1 goal and 3 assists. Itu Lustarian as well. He's got a goal and an assist in the 1 game that he's played. Tim Stutzel as well. He's got a goal in the 2 games he's played against Toronto. Although he took quite a nasty cross check in the last game I saw looking at our Twitter as well.
He's gone out with an injury, I believe, for the game against Winnipeg tonight. I believe it is as we're recording this, so that's not particularly very helpful. But yeah,
brilliant, is it?
Oh yeah, exactly. Especially for the Senators, that they're not looking particularly very bad so far this season. But yeah, I mean, losing a guy like Tim Stützle really doesn't help their regular season. But yeah, I mean, Kirill Kaprizov, like, he's been such a fantastic player to start the year. His first NHL game, he scores an overtime winner. I think he's become only the third player in league history. It's either Minnesota Wild franchise history or league history to score an overtime winner in his NHL debut. So Minnesota fans have been excited for him to come over for a very long time, and he really isn't disappointing to start the season, is he, Chris?
No. Other people, who did you mention other people then? I mean, I'm kind of going to netminders now. Ilya Sorokin didn't have the greatest first game.
No, he did not.
Well, goals against average of 5.
Yep.
And he save percentage of .844. He did face quite a few shots, to be honest.
Do you know the circumstances around his NHL debut? Which if he wasn't playing the Rangers that game, I would have felt really sorry for the guy. Because for those of you who are unaware, who didn't catch the Rangers Islanders game earlier this week, which if you live in Europe, chances are if you're not a diehard Rangers fan like I am, you probably wouldn't have because it finished at 3:00 in the morning. But Semyon Varlamov, the other Russian goaltender for the New York Islanders, he actually got injured by a shot during warm-ups. I think it was Cal Clutterbuck.
He took it below his neck, didn't he?
Yeah, Cal Clutterbuck shot the puck like right underneath his neck, right underneath his neck guard. And that was with about 10 minutes to go in warm-ups. He has to then come off the ice. Corey Schneider becomes the emergency backup netminder. That's the really good thing I like about the taxi squad. They always have a player, whether there's injuries or something that happens, there's a player that can just jump in straight away and kind of take that place. But yeah, so Ilya Sorokin basically had 10 minutes to get ready for his NHL debut. He wasn't expecting to play in the game until 10 minutes before the puck dropped. He allows a goal on his second shot or his first shot 2.5 minutes into the game. And yeah, I mean, it also doesn't help that the New York Rangers were out for blood because they'd been completely embarrassed 4-0 on home ice on their first game of the season. So it was kind of
it didn't help that either.
No, not at all. So it was a kind of a combination of a load of different things. And that led to a pretty unfortunate situation for Sorokin, but he's a professional. He's a solid goaltender and has been in the KHL for a very long time. So I'd expect him to be able to get back into it and, shake it off and just kind of move on. Because, everybody thinks, I've been the same with Lafreniere's NHL debut. Like, he didn't score in his first game. He hasn't got points in his first 2 games. They play the New Jersey Devils tonight as we're recording this episode. It's kind of like, I really just want to see those young guys pick up their first goals and their first points, because how much that eats away at them. So for Sorokin, yeah, he's not as young as those guys. He's 24, 25 years old now. So I'd imagine him being like, oh, okay, I didn't get my first NHL win. It might eat away at him a little bit, but he's like, you know what? I'll have the chance to get another one later on. And, he's got the chance to have a decade-long career in the best league in the world. So if he plays that towards his standards. So, yeah, Chris, was there anybody else that you wanted to mention?
A netminder who had better time of it, Vatek Vanešek from the Czech Republic. Had his first career game with the Washington Capitals.
Oh, wow.
Had 30 saves on 31 attempts for a .968 save percentage and only a 1 goals against average. So good first game for him.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And then there's another netminder, Igor Shesterkin, who you'll know obviously more about. He did have a few games last season, didn't he? But
yes.
He still technically counts as a rookie.
Yep, absolutely.
Conceded 4 goals in 33 shots last time around.
Yeah, he had a bit of a rough game. I'll give him that. He had a bit of a rough game. His first game of the season, he just wasn't on it, unfortunately. But then again, neither was the rest of the Rangers team, so I won't put that solely on him,
And then I suppose the guy who had the worst game, for want of a better phrase, was Ville Husso, the 6'3" netminder for the St. Louis Blues. who had his game against Colorado on the 15th. Like, it's like the one they ran out like 8-0 winners or something.
Yes, I believe so.
He conceded 4 goals on 14 save attempts in the first period, with a save percentage of .714. Got pulled at the end of the first period. So it has a goals against average of 12.15 at the moment. So not great for him.
Not very good at all. But so, as you can imagine, the NHL season's only a week into the 2021 year. And yeah, there's going to be some players that come out swinging. There's going to be some players that are a bit of a slower burn. But, you know, we've got some interesting hockey lined up there. And if you guys want us to keep you up to date with the prospects around the NHL and kind of the rookies, and, well, obviously there's lots of European players that sit up there in terms of the point scorers. We'll keep you updated with those guys. We've started to do it on Twitter a little bit recently, kind of former KHL, SHL, Liga, DL alumni. And some of you guys seem to be really interested in us keeping up to date with that. So we'll for sure keep you up to date with that. And yeah, we'll let you know how some of those European players are doing across the pond. So I don't know about you, Chris. I think this is a perfect place to end today's episode of the EuroPuck podcast. We got through some really interesting topics. You had a quiz that you grilled me on, so no surprise there. I just want to say before we finish, a big thank you once again to both DraftKings and Crosscheck Clothing for sponsoring this episode of the podcast. We're really happy to try and get some sponsors on here and, you know, give us... We've been doing this like since August, and, you know, we've wanted to have the chance to earn ourselves a bit of money while we do it and promote some brands that we really like. Like, I use DraftKings and Crosscheck Clothing. I've used them many times in the past. So I want to bring you guys stuff that I would use myself, you know? So there you go. We've got some interesting things coming up in the works, hopefully. We can't reveal anything yet because it's still very much in the works, but probably by the time this episode goes out, we may or may not have some really exciting news on our social media. So go and check out @EuroPuck Podcast on Twitter and or Instagram. But yeah, thanks for watching this episode, guys. We hope you enjoyed episode 20. God, we're getting through them now, aren't we?
We are.
But if you want to keep updated on all things European hockey, or send us your thoughts, opinions, or questions either from today's show or for our next show, check out our social media handles at the bottom of the screen. And if you enjoyed listening to either or both of your hosts today, which of course you did because we're wonderful, you can check out my social media at OddmanRushYT on Twitter, or Chris at Chris_Gadsby. But thanks again for listening, guys, or watching, whether it's on YouTube or Spotify or Apple or anything. And we'll see you again next time. Have a good one, folks.